The stars of the sport have showed up here at the Tour de Suisse ready to race. All of the big names have stepped up their game and showed the world why they are threats in this upcoming Tour de France. Team Highroad's Kim Kirken climbed to a stage win and took the yellow jersey. But yesterday's time trial proved to be too much, as Roman Kreuziger of Team Liquigas put in the ride of his life to take the stage and become the new overall leader. One more stage remains to crown the overall champion, as Cyclism Sundays brings you stage 9 of the Tour de Suisse, next on Versus. It's a perfect day in Switzerland. Everybody enjoying themselves on the shores of Lake Lucerne here as they celebrate their holidays while the Tour de Suisse celebrates its final stage of 9 days of racing. The town of Altdorf will set them off on the way to Bern. And this, by the way, was the town where William Tell once shot the arrow that's pierced the apple on his son's head. Hi everybody, welcome now to Cyclism Sundays, brought to you by Hampton Hotels. Phill Liggett alongside me, Paul Sherwen, and this the last big stage race before we go to the big one, the Tour de France. Paul, what have we learnt this week?
Well, I think if we combine these two races, the Dauphiné Libéré and, of course, the Tour of Switzerland, which have been used by all of the guys to prepare for the Tour de France, we've seen Cadel Evans is on form, so is Alejandro Valverde. Question mark, I have to say, for Carlos Sass, who rode the Dauphiné last week. We don't know how he's going to perform. But also, I think this week we've seen the Schleck brothers are ready. Damiano Cunego, a little bit quiet, but I think on the right track.
It does appear that the big boys are timing their form to absolute perfection. But who's going to win at this race? We saw Kim Kirken grab the lead and lose the lead. And today might even see a new leader and indeed a final winner. Well, let's see how the race developed. We'll go back now to last Monday. We'll pick up the highlights and bring you right through to how we stand today. Well, stage 3 of the Tour de Suisse resumed from Plum to 155 kilometres heading to Gossau. It was eventually to turn out to be a day for the sprinters, but boy, the weather was as bad as it was at the start of the Tour of Italy.
Yeah, the race dominated early on by a three-man breakaway, but coming down to the end, it was all together. The overall leader, Igor Anton, very comfortably in the main field, but the day really was dominated by the sprinters. Despite a few attacks on a small climb down on the run-in towards the finish, everyone came into town together.
Yes, the three early leaders were swept up, and quite literally, I think, with the way the weather was coming back at them. And then it was a race towards the line, and a familiar figure finally has got himself back in front. It was Robbie McEwen warning us that he could well be ready for the Tour de France by taking a stage win here. Only his second win of the year for Robbie McEwen. Getting in ahead of Oscar Freire, the winner of stage 1. Onward to stage number 4, we moved on from Gossau to Doma, 171 kilometres, and the weather was still against the riders. As the riders continued though, again, there were a small number of leaders out front. They were all swept up 6 kilometres from the finish.
And then it was the teams of the sprinters on the front end of the main field trying to sort it out once again. And strangely enough, now getting his sprinting legs back in order was that little man from Australia, Robbie McEwen.
Back-to-back stagings to Robbie, so everybody who said he was too old to win a bike race were being proven wrong here in 2 days in very short shrift. And again, it was Oscar Freire there who finished in 3rd place. Onward to stage number 5 now. This was a ride of 190 kilometres. It turned out to be an excellent stage of racing. The weather was getting a little bit better, but only slightly. A chance to see Frank Schleck on the attack, looking for yellow.
Well, Frank Schleck had said at the start of the Tour de Suisse he wanted to win this bike race, and that's why he moved. But Marcus Foten said, right, I can see this is a very serious move going clear, and he moved away from the main pack to try and see if he could pull himself back to Frank Schleck, and he did.
So Frank Schleck joined by Marcus Foten, the two riders now clear, and it looked like there would be a yellow jersey awaiting Schleck at the finishing line. Then Schleck made a mistake on the descent. He didn't get around a right-hand bend. He hit the barrier. Now watch this. Foten sees him go literally over the top. He's caught by a tree below, otherwise the fall would have been far more serious. Even so, and although he came back up and was held back up by the mechanics ball, he hurt his back and he has a suspected broken finger.
Yeah, the sad thing about Frank Schleck on this occasion was that in fact he lost all chances of winning the Tour of Switzerland, but safely. The injuries are not too bad and they won't keep him out of the Tour de France, but that was an image that went around the world.
It did indeed. Meanwhile, down at the finish, Fulton couldn't believe his luck. Without Frank Schleck, he ran home for the biggest win of his career. And that in itself was also a great victory for Gerolsteiner. Picture of Schleck here kissing the talisman he always wears, which was given to him by his mother when he was born. So I think he was thanking the heavens he was safe and sound. The yellow jersey, well, another day perhaps. Marcus Fulton was still the winner of the stage, and Anton kept his lead. That would be the last day in yellow for Anton as the race swung now onto stage number 6 towards Verbier. 188 kilometres, and Kinkerken would be the talking point of the day.
The race was dominated, Phil, early on by an 11-man breakaway, and Visconti, the champion of Italy, decided he wanted to try and race this apart. He was chased down by the Irishman Phill, who pulled himself back up to the Italian champion, and it's setting itself up for a rather exciting finish.
Phil looking for a spot in the Tour de France for Ireland here as 3 riders got together. Frank is in there, drops Danen, and Stein de Volder comes up towards the leaders. This was now another powerful move in this year's Tour de Suisse.
Well, Stein de Volder decided that this was a day for him to try and make the move, and you can see him just coming across there in the jersey of the champion of Belgium. This was the day that he felt that he could get the stranglehold on the overall classification. And at the back, Igor Anton was in trouble.
This is where Anton cracked. Having led the Tour for 4 days, he was to lose the yellow jersey now as the big stars put the pressure on the front. De Volder, who nurtures a secret thought of finishing in the top 10 in the Tour de France, was really giving his legs a great testing here. But as they got down to the finish, Kinkerken, who finished 2nd overall in this race a year ago, was registering his claim for victory this time around. Time to zip up the jersey? No. The yellow jersey awaited him.
The important thing, Paul, was I think the way that he won this stage. It was a very dominating stage to take the victory, and of course he was to take the overall jersey as well. But the next stage will be a little different because it will be a day for the sprinters to have a go again.
So a yellow jersey for Kinkerken, 171 kilometres to stage 7, taking the ride from Gruyere with the famous cheeses up towards Lies. And again, an early attack, 3 riders out in front.
Leif Hoster was the man who decided he wanted to try and make the move on a stage like this, but he was pulled back into the fold on the run-in down towards the finish line by almost all of the main field.
The riders were now only 24 hours away from mounting time trial, but they weren't going to take it easy towards the finish, as again the attacks were launched from the main field.
Well, Fabian Cancellara was very close to the front end of the main field on a number of occasions, and eventually he was joined by Marcus Fulton, and this looked like a very good move.
Well, always take a strong man. Remember that Cancellara topped and tailed this event last year with stage wins, but they were time trials, a prologue and a last day time trial. But remember the finish in Compiègne in the Tour de France last year when the yellow jersey of Cancellara got clear? Well, it's about to happen again.
Yes, but this breakaway was rather interesting because on the run-in down towards the finish line, the yellow jersey himself saw that this was a dangerous move and he leapt across, so too did Philippe Gilbert.
Good to see Kirken being observant, but Cancellara, well, he outwitted his men. It's his favourite trick. He can ride a time trial fast, and again he used that unusual ability of top speed to ride away from the field and get his 8th win of the season. Poor old Eric Zabel, another 2nd place for him. And so it was on to stage number 8, down to Altdorf for the ride up the Clausen Pass. Just 25 kilometres, all of it uphill. Ruggiano was setting the trend.
25 kilometres, the average speed 25 kilometres an hour, but the little climber from Venezuela was the man who set the very early benchmark.
And then with the reversed order of classification bringing home the stars, Ruggiano's time was standing for quite a while, but then new times are being bettered at the checkpoints.
Andries Kloden had a man on the mission. He wanted to try and see if he could wrench the lead of this Tour de Suisse off the shoulders of the man who'd got the lead, Kinkerken, and his times were looking good. Also, Stein de Volder, not the champion of Belgium in the road race, but not in the individual time trial, thought that he could do the goods too.
And then came to the start here of Roman Kreuziger, who was to be the big surprise of the day. Don't forget that he'd finished 2nd in the Tour of Romandy. He was now trying to reverse that situation and become the leader of this. Out on course, though, the yellow jersey of Kinkerken was losing massive time.
Yes, he was. He wasn't in the best day of his whole career, and I tell you what, there were some very interesting times, but probably the most interesting time was Kreuziger, because he was going even faster than Andreas Kloden, and every time we got a time check, the yellow jersey was losing chunks.
He was becoming seconds, but becoming minutes now, and the man making a lot of progress too was the rider from Astana, and that was Kloden, because he was coming up from the depths and was now challenging for the overall lead. Damiano Cunego was also showing top form as well.
11th place finish for Damiano Cunego was proving that he's on line for the Tour de France, but Kim Kirken could not take the pressure of the yellow jersey on his shoulders as they got further and further up towards the finish line. There was some phenomenal performance being posted.
As they came to the line now, it was going to be a new winner and the best time here as the riders started to come home. The men that mattered now were still turning in great times, but the big surprise without doubt was Roman Kreuziger. This was Kreuziger finishing now. He had set the trend all the way up. Former World Junior Champion and a good rider at cyclocross, now showing he was the top man in the Tour de Suisse. Big disappointment for Stein de Volder.
Lost an awful lot of time, Stein de Volder. So too did Kim Kirken, not only losing himself top place, but losing himself a podium position and dropping down into 7th place overall.
That's correct. He lost 6.5 minutes there to Stein de Volder, which was an awful lot. So Kreuziger is the new leader of the Tour de Suisse as we prepare now to go to the action on Cyclism Sundays. There's the current situation. Kloden was the big man to gain yesterday. He now sits in second. Those few seconds, though, might be a little bit too much. Kim Kirken has slipped away down into 7th, and Laurent ten Dam, big star of the future, up into 10th. All right, before we join the action now, let's have a look at the profile today. They're running right around the edge of Lake Lucerne, Paul, so it's not going to be too hilly.
Well, it shouldn't be too difficult. A stage of 168 kilometres takes the riders away from Altdorf on the road into Bern. Not an individual time trial as it was last year. A fairly tricky running towards the finish line, I have to say. There are 2 fourth category climbs towards the end and 2 sprint bonus points as well. But at the end of the day, I've got a gut feeling it's going to be a day for the sprinters.
Looking here at the gears, 1 minute 52 is the gap, Paul, and the 5 riders here been away for a little while, but they're not really being allowed to run too far. 31 miles from the finish. Glorious day. It's in it's about 88 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment.
Magnificent day for racing. The riders have had some spectacular views, and they will be leaving the Alps behind them as they move down towards Bern. But I have a feeling the teams of the sprinters will come to the front down towards the end and reel these riders in. 1 minute and 52 with 51 kilometres to go to the finish line in Bern is really not too much to worry about. But there are a lot of riders on the front end of the main field from Team Liquigas, and I think they've got it pretty much under control for Kreuziger.
Well, you can tell by the pace at the back here. Case de Pan have 1 rider in the breakaway. He carries number 1, Francesco Perez, because last year's winner was Vladimir Karpitz. Karpitz not riding here, trying to defend his championship. But here is the breakaway. And in the breakaway too is Rennie Weisinger from the Volksbank. That's one of the wild card entries here. Darren Lull, the South African, on Team BMC. Martin Jelingai of Silence Lotto. And Hervé Duclos-Lazal from the Cofidis. Those are the 5 riders. Nobody threatening the overall lead. It's a perfect scenario at the moment for Kreuziger because he'll keep a very close eye now on Astana's Andreas Kloden.
Good chance to see, really, Phil, how good these road surfaces are in Switzerland. They really are magnificent racing routes that riders have been through over this last 9 days of racing. Hardly any major incidents apart from that one in the middle of the week, which I think everybody around the world is talking about. That crash by Frank Schleck really was very dramatic, and I have to say he was a lucky man on that occasion. Unfortunately, if we look at the roads, they really don't lend themselves to accidents, but that one I think was just a little bit too much nervous energy involved.
Well, the sun is getting high in the sky now, mid-afternoon, as we're watching 5 riders clear. The gap is already coming down here. It's down to 1:49 as we look across here, the beautiful countryside of Switzerland. It's bathed in sunshine. The Tour de Suisse goes on. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back to the Tour de Suisse. Well, before we go back to the action here in Switzerland, there's a lot of big-time bike racing also being held in the United States. And one of the main events there was the CSC Invitational in Arlington, Virginia, for both the men and the women. The women were up first, Paul, a ride over 31 miles, and this turned out to be an even better race than last year. Plenty of attacks.
Plenty of attacks. The race eventually dominated by a 3-woman breakaway, which survived right down towards the very end.
Well, this breakaway got midway through the event. They never came back into the action. At the finish, Catherine Cheatley won the sprint ahead of Laura Trops and Andrea Dvorak. So the women, and then came the men right up behind them, and this was a big race too, over 100 kilometers or 62 miles.
Well, again, it was the speed here that was the main thing about this race, Phil, and when it came down to the end, it turned out to be a very rapid bunch sprint. It looked as if Team High Road were getting themselves organised, but in the sprint down towards the line, there certainly was a little bit of a surprise.
Well, the big teams tried to keep the race together for the sprinters, and on a circuit like this, it was the sprinters who took it out. Man we came to know well in the Tour of California, Dominic Roland. Well, this time he was pushed back into second place, the race being won by Luca Damiani of Colavita Sutter. Dominic Roland was second, and Carl Menzies of HealthNet made it home in third. And the weather here in Switzerland, as nice as it was in Virginia for the CSC Invitational there. The riders enjoying warm sunshine. What a change in the weather. The first 3 or 4 days of this race was dreadfully wet, but now the hot weather is set, and it's been like this for the last couple of days of racing. Liquid Gas there, all doing their job, and they've got the race leader, Kreuziger, just behind them.
Well, interesting, that young man, Kreuziger, just 23 years of age. There he is in the yellow jersey, a former junior world champion and second in the World Junior Cyclocross Championships when he was a very young man. But I think this year, Phil, he's certainly come to the top. He was second in the early part of this season in the Tour of Romandy. And I think the way he rode that individual time trial, he rode it with an awful lot of enthusiasm and maturity.
Well, he seems to be around an awful long time, but he is only 23 years of age, and so he's got a great future ahead of him here. Liquid Gas will do well to hold on to him, but I think the big teams will have an eye on Roman Kreuziger, especially if he runs out today as winner of the Tour de Suisse at 23. This is the field here now, cruising towards the end. They know the back end of the course is a little bit undulating. Shouldn't worry the non-climbers, but for the sprinters, if it comes down to such a finish, difficult to know who might take the sprint out, because a lot of the sprinters, including Robbie McEwen, are now back at home watching this on television. But McEwen, in fact, Paul, didn't start the mountain time trial yesterday, I suppose to be expected.
Yeah, but at least he proved to himself and to his team that he still can win bike races, taking 2 stages here at the Tour de Suisse. I have to say, Phil, looking at the finish line, it is a very narrow finishing straight for the sprinters. They'll have to get onto the front of the main field and stretch it out into a big, long line. If it is going to be a bunch of sprints, try and keep it nice and safe.
We're tucked in behind Peter Jacobs here of Silence Lotto. Stunning countryside, isn't it? Beautiful roads for racing. They don't stay flat for too long, but also they don't always climb as steeply as you might think here in Switzerland. There's plenty of mountains, but a lot of them don't have roads over them, making for a lot of fun in the winter for skiing. Well, the gap has started to nudge out just a little bit, just on 30 miles now from the finish in the Swiss capital of Bern. And next week then, I think it is, we'll have the European Cup final being played here at the same stadium where the race is finishing today. 2 minutes and 1 second. Here are the leaders. Now that's Hervé Duclos-Lassalle. Looks a bit like his dad at the back, doesn't he? Well,
not really. His dad would normally probably be at the front end of a breakaway like this, and he'd be ripping it to pieces. Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle was a man who raced in my era. In fact, he won himself Paris-Roubaix on 2 occasions. It's pretty impressive, though, to see that his son has decided to follow in his dad's more famous wheel marks.
2:02, 46 kilometers to go to the finish. Francisco Perez, Case the Pond in the great win. More of a climber, though. If it comes down to the sprint finish between these 5, we could be treated to a win for the team BMC from the United States, because Darren Lill, the South African rider, he's the little fella on the left there, is a very fast finisher, and that would be a great result, wouldn't it?
It would be a great result for BMC, a team that's come in here to show off the flag if they can, and they've certainly been present in a number of breakaway situations. But with 45 kilometers to go, they're 20 kilometers away from a 4th category climb of 25 k's to go to the finish, and that's a great launch pad to first of all try and split up this breakaway, but also for somebody to try and come away from the front end of the main field. And then there's another nasty little climb, Phil, again a 4th category, and 8.5 kilometers to go. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Fabian Cancellara knows that climb pretty well.
Well, it might mean that CSC will have to take up the chase here, because there's nobody in this breakaway within 20 minutes of the overall lead. There's no reason for Liquid Gas to chase. In fact, this takes all the pressure off them. So it's up to CSC maybe to bring them back, and they're going to have to start racing soon, I think.
Well, also you've got to not discount Team Rabobank, because Oscar Freire, the winner of the opening stage of the Tour of Switzerland, is still in here as well. And he's the kind of guy, after a long, hot day in the saddle like this, Phil, could come up with the victory. I still think that Eric Zabel would be my favourite. I'd like to see him get a win. He's been so close on so many occasions in recent months. And You know, if it hadn't been for Cancellara zipping off in the last couple of kilometres the other day, Zabel would have won a stage.
Absolutely, and terribly bad luck for Eric there, because he would have cleaned up in the sprint, but there's always somebody, it seems, gets in ahead of him, either in the sprint or on a lone move. We asked him this morning how many second places he thought he'd had, and he couldn't remember, but he said, "My father will, you must ask my father." But he says not so many. Well, I think he has had, I remember one year, Paul, he was running at 14 second places, so obviously he does get quite a lot of second places, especially, of course, as you get older. The old twitch fibres, I guess, are slowing down. 44 kilometres left to go to the finish, about 27 miles, 2 minutes 20 is the gap. As we now look at the race coming up towards the finish here, where with 44 to go, we'll take a break. Rejoin us, more action from Switzerland. Welcome back to the Tour de Suisse. Well, yesterday it was not the happiest of days for Kim Kirken. He went into the race as overall leader and he finished it out of the lead and down into 7th place. Here he is now talking to Paul Sherwen.
Well, Kim, that was a pretty tough time trial for you yesterday. It's hard having the yellow jersey with just 1 day to go and having a tough day like that.
Yeah, right. Yellow jersey was not the first time having yellow jersey in time trial, but you're always a little bit nervous. And Tour de Suisse was very hard for me. I didn't expect to go so well the days before, and I hadn't really recovered from the days before, and that's what came out yesterday. It was a really hard stage, and you have to be prepared before by training to survive the Tour de Suisse of 10 days.
But I think what's important was you, like a lot of the other contenders, actually raced this to try and take the race lead, and maybe a little bit too much nervous energy used on the roads.
Actually, when I'm in Tour de Suisse and I will ride for the first spots, I'm not thinking on training anymore. I'm not thinking on Tour de France. I just keep on going and I try to get a victory. And that was also like the days before. And for sure, you spend some energy, but also the other guys spend energy. So for everybody the same.
Well, he's obviously disappointed, Paul, but the Tour de France, just on 2 weeks away, I suppose, so he's got a chance. I still think he'd be a challenger for Team High Road.
Well, I think his form's there, the legs are good, and let's not forget, I think, Phill, in this Tour de Suisse, he actually rode it to race. He was taking the race to the men, and at the end of the day, he just cracked up in a very difficult individual time trial.
Well, just talking about Michael Rogers there, Paul, I thought he was coming on really well in the Dauphiné Libre. Finished very well, got stronger every day, and then started the rumour he wouldn't ride the Tour de France. What do you reckon?
Well, I think the way we saw him progressing during the Dauphiné, if he has a good couple of weeks of training in the mountains, I reckon he could be a man who could be returning to the top of his form. It's a story I think we'll just have to follow over the next couple of weeks.
Well, as you know, in February he was diagnosed with the Epstein-Barr virus, and hopefully he's got that out of his system now. But let's hope he does come back into his own, because last year, we'll never forget, he was the race leader on the road when he crashed out of the Tour de France. Same day Stuart O'Grady crashed out. We called it Black Wednesday. 42 kilometres to go, same 5 riders in the break. They've gone slightly further ahead at 2 minutes and 24 seconds. And the field, all these breakaway riders know that they have a chance here. The combination is perfect to escape and stay away.
And it seems that everybody is participating in the workload at the front end of this group of 5 riders. They're holding on to 2.5 minutes with 42 kilometres to go. They'll start to feel confident that they will survive over the front end of the main field, but they would certainly like to have 2 minutes with 20 kilometres to go. That will give them a sporting chance.
Well, let's see. They've got 2:25 at 42, but it's going the right way just now. And the Swiss roads here, absolutely perfect for bike racing. The Swiss authorities use a different system. They do close the roads, of course, but it's called a rolling closure. There's cars ahead of the race shutting the road down and reopening them so that the Swiss public are inconvenienced as little as possible. Gerolsteiner here. We've had a good run in the sport this last couple of weeks. 3 big new sponsors being announced, but Gerolsteiner, one of the sponsors who will leave the sport this year. But they're rumouring, Paul, that they have a new sponsor, but are saying nothing just yet.
Not yet. I think we'll start to hear some interesting statements coming out during the Tour de France, but at least there are some big sponsors coming into the sport, and I think we're all very happy to see that Team High Road now have got a very interesting sponsor, Columbia Sportswear, which is a company which has promised to stay in the sport for a couple of years, and that, I think, is a move in the right direction.
Absolutely. Big name sponsors. 41 kilometres. Another one ticked off. The gap holding at 2 minutes and 27. Francesco Perez of Case Depon, Rennie Weisinger of Volksbank, Darren Lill of Team BSC from the United States riding this event, Martin Jalinghi from Silence Lotto, and Hervé Duclos-Lazal of Cofidis. This is a chance to look at the main field. Just setting the pace there for Gerolsteiner. At the front is Stefan Schreck.
Phil, talking about the sponsors coming into the sport, I forgot to mention that Team Slipstream announced as well that they've got a big sponsor coming in as well. They'll be taken up by the company Garmin when they go through to the Tour de France, and that, I think, again, is a good step in the right direction for the American sport, because it's going to be 2 American sponsored teams now participating in the Tour de France, and that, I think, is pretty exciting.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, there'll be no excuse for Slipstream going off course, will there?
Well, no, they should be able to follow the right route now. They can program it in right now.
2:29, 41 kilometers to go. So the team will be renamed the Garmin Chipotle, sponsored by H3O.
25 miles of racing, 40 kilometers, 2:29. But just every time we look at the main field, Phil, I feel that they're starting to get themselves just a little bit more nervous and a little bit more organized. And the cameramen and the motorbike riders here this afternoon, I think, just waving hello to the crowd. This is the leading group of 5. That's Darren Lill there from BMC Racing in the white jersey, and he's a young rider from South Africa.
Well, these are the 5 leaders. They're still looking good. As we conclude another segment, we'll take another break. These boys are inching closer to the Swiss capital of Bern. They've got 25 miles to go. See you in a moment. Well, the Tour de France is just around the corner. These boys know it, and they're honing their fine form now. 5 riders here in the breakaway. We could well see 1 or 2 of these riders in the Tour de France, like Francesco Perez of Case de Bon, possibly Hervé Duplo-Lazal of Cofidis as well. And so they're looking forward and hoping the weather might stay as well as it is today here in Switzerland. 39 kilometers to go, and they're still nudging out. It's looking good at the moment, 2.5 minutes.
Well, I think it's the lull before the storm here, Phil. As we look at the leading group of 4 riders on the road, you can be absolutely certain that this main field here will start to get themselves very organized. We'll see the orange Armada, I think, come to the front for Oscar Freire in a short while. There's a lot of lime green jerseys there of Team Liquigas. They don't really have a reason to chase that 5-man breakaway, although if it does come down together towards the end, they've got 2 very good men to finish off in the team, Filippo Pozzato and Murillo Fischer, the big sprinter from Brazil.
I think the field here, those that are interested in the result today, are going to wait until the little stepping stone, which comes category 4 at around about 142 kilometers in, so that's about 25 kilometers, 30 kilometers from the finish, and that could be where the final counter-attack will come. On the other hand, it might give somebody a chance to nip away who's in that leading 5 riders.
Yeah, there's another good climb though at 8.5 kilometers to go, 5 miles down towards the finish. But although it looks as if there's a little bit of a climb up to the finish line as well, one man certainly knows the finish very well indeed, and that's Fabian Cancellara. Looking here at Team Quickstep, I wonder who they're thinking about here this afternoon. They may well be thinking about them and Gert Steegmans, who normally is a lead-out man for big Tom Bonen, who's going through all kinds of difficulties with his life at the moment.
Yes, we all know the story now. Caught for using the social drug cocaine in an out-of-competition test. He's got no discipline facing from the authorities of cycling, but he certainly has felt the wrath of the Tour de France. They've told him now he's not welcome in the event. So last year's green jersey out of the Tour de France. Indeed, along with the yellow and the white jersey holder, Alberto Contador, because he's a member of Team Astana, and they too are not welcome in the Tour de France. Back to the Tour de Suisse then. They're riding here, and Astana again in a major tour in the lead up to the Tour de France are having a terrific tour. They lead in the team race, they lead in the points race, King of the Mountains rather, and they also lead, also have second overall. I thought for a moment that we might see Cloden go for this, but I think he's just 48 seconds might be a bridge too far.
I think it's just a little bit too far. This is the national champion of Belgium at the back here, Stijn de Volder, a title he will have to defend next weekend in Belgium, as all the national championships take place just 1 week before the start of the Tour de France. And just continuing your little mention about Team Astana there, it's amazing to think what they've done over the last 5 weeks of racing. They've won themselves the Giro d'Italia, they finished 3rd in the Dauphiné Libéré with Levi Leipheimer, and of course it looks like they're going to run out 2nd in the Tour de Suisse with Andreas Cloden. It really is a pity, I think, Phil, to see that they won't be participating in the Tour de France, but in the battle that everybody's fighting to make this sport cleaner and more honest, I think sometimes you have to have some innocent victims, and it may well be good in the long run for Alberto Contador to miss out on the Tour de France this year and come back a stronger, more aggressive character.
Well, whatever you think about the organiser of the Tour de France for taking this action, one thing's for sure, when they make a decision, they stick by it. There's no going back. Well, this is a very typical Swiss scene here. The houses painted. A beautiful, clean and tidy nation. 2:28 the gap. We're coursing our way towards Bern, remember. And the finish again is on the flat in the same situation as when we had the time trial last year. But as we look here, 36 kilometers to go. 2:28 the gap. One man we haven't seen anything of today, but he's riding down there, is Bobby Julich, and we'll be talking about him when we get back after the break. See you in a moment.
This year, also being an Olympic year, kind of gave me that little extra spark to perhaps continue for one more year.
Well, welcome back to the Tour de Suisse. Well, one man who's riding in the Tour de Suisse but won't be up in the Tour de France is Bobby Julich, but he still nurtures Olympic hopes. So Bobby Julich is now our subject of the road to Beijing, brought to you by Hampton Hotels.
The selection process is always difficult. I wouldn't have been able to do the Olympics in 2004 until Lance gave up his spot and decided not to go to the Olympics. So I was just happy to go, and then to go there in my first Olympics and get a medal, it was huge for me. And that was one of those little tick marks by those things that you want to do before you stop racing. I wanted to do the Tour, but being on a team like Team CSC and knowing the sacrifices that all my teammates had made, I knew that they couldn't put me on the team just because of my name or what I had done there in the past. So I fully expected not to be called up. And then this year, also being an Olympic year, kind of gave me that little extra spark to perhaps continue for one more year. The best thing that you can do is get great results, and that's what I have to focus on. Obviously, I have a lot of work to do. A lot of guys here, Christian and Dave Zabriskie, and George, of course Levi, Jason McCartney, and quite a few other guys are going to be shooting for those remaining 4 spots, and then there's only one more spot for the time trial, which is obviously the reason why I want to go to the Olympics.
Seems a long time ago now, Paul, since he got that 3rd place finish in the '98 Tour de France, but he still keeps his enthusiasm, doesn't he?
Well, he still loves the sport. Let's not forget, Phil, he did get himself a bronze medal in the individual time trial in Athens, and I think that's what he's still making him dream.
And we'll see if we can find Bobby Julich down there in the pack. He's certainly in there. There's the gap for you, 2:23, 36 kilometres to go. We're only a few kilometres away now from the climb. I won't call it the climb of the day. There are 2 4th category climbs. They're the only ripples. There's also a couple of sprints along the route before we get down to the finish outside the stadium here in Bern.
Well, looking at the main field from the sky there, Phil, they were starting to stretch out. I think they're starting to get themselves just that little bit more organised at the front end of the peloton. As we look here at Team Gerolsteiner, they've still got Robert Forster in their midst, a man who could take out the victory on the final stage here this afternoon. That's why this man has been set to the front. You can see also Team Quickstep taking an interest, and as well Milram. They'll be thinking, of course, about Eric Zabel, second on the stage just 2 days ago.
Keeping on taking the food after 9 days of racing. Keep on fueling up for the end of the day. Beautiful clear blue skies, and the riders really delighted to see how the weather has turned. We've had some very heavy rain indeed, but riding away from it now. Forecast is set good for the week ahead for the boys to train, ready for the Tour de France. Next weekend, of course, it's the national championships around the world, and they will carry those jerseys, at least they hope they will carry the winner's jersey into the Tour de France.
No more prouder man than a man who can take his national champions jersey to the roads of the Tour de France, because that is the most magnificent forum to display that you are the champion of your country. Team Liquigas, nothing really to worry about here this afternoon, apart from the crowning at the end of the day, they hope, of their new star of the future. 23 years of age, Phil, Roman Kreuziger, and what an incredible time trial he rode yesterday. Not necessarily the easiest time trial I think many of these riders have ridden, because it was a 25-kilometre uphill time trial covered in 1 hour.
Yeah, and it's shown the quality of this rider for the future, how he's getting stronger. Last year he was the leader early on in the Ciclista Lombardi in Italy, but that was by virtue of his win on the first stage. That was back in April last year. So he's really earned this one, and he's caught the jersey at the most crucial stage of the race. Cloden really went for him yesterday in that time trial, and I really thought if it had gone another 3 or 4 kilometres, we might have had a different scenario. But right now, Kreuziger on top. Remember that Cloden beat Kreuziger in the Tour of Romandy. It could well be a reversal here in the Tour de Suisse.
Yeah, but in defence, I think of Andreas Cloden, you have to add that Cloden is coming off the Tour of Italy, a very tough 3-week bike race, and he may well be accusing just a little bit of fatigue at the end of this 9-day stage race, but still proving once again that he is a top bike rider and a top man.
Still a lot of work being done there by Team Quick-Step's Hubert Schwab. All the Swiss boys getting to the front here to show the home fans they're in the bike race. This is the leading group, lest we forget, at 2:03 on these beautiful country roads. It's a bike racer's delight. There's 34 kilometres to go, still holding more than 2 minutes. It's a good sign. It just want to see now how they get over these 2 small climbs on the run into Bern. There's no reason for Liquigas to chase it down. They'll be happily sitting back there, letting anybody else do the work, as we've seen, because they've only one worry now, and that's to make sure they guide Kreuziger right up to the finishing line for the biggest win of his life at 23 years of age. So at 33 kilometres, we're just on 20 miles from the finish. We'll take another break. Rejoin us shortly. Welcome back as we look down at the peloton here, the Tour de Suisse, as they run down towards the finish. There is still left in this race 134 riders. 5 of them have got a lead now of exactly 2 minutes.
Just a quick look there, you can just see Andreas Cloden having a quick chat with Roman Kreuziger at the front end of the main field. But as you see the movement coming into the peloton now, these guys are all starting to take this race very seriously. I just saw an armada of CSC riders moving up towards the front, obviously advised by their man Fabian Cancellara, the man who is local to this area, and in fact the race goes right past his front door.
Boys at the back thinking of a nice training day today on this final day of the Tour de Suisse. Good roads and a good chance to gather in 4 hours of solid riding as they prepare their build-up for the last 2 weeks before the Tour starts. It starts 1 week next Saturday, don't forget. Hop Fabu, well, we all know that's for, Paul.
Well, that would be Fabu, and that is for Fabian Cancellara.
Well, as we look here, rounds of applause. Remember that we're commentating from the finishing line in Bern. That's where Cancellara lives. You can probably hear plenty of people enjoying themselves, but the Swiss know how to enjoy themselves. This is a hot city for sport, a hot country rather for sport right now, currently with the European Football Championships on. So everybody's in sporting mood. And down at the finishing line here, they're all waiting to see if Cancellara can get his boys to catch those 5 and then demonstrate how quick he can get away from the field.
Well, there's a rather sad spectator on the other side of our commentary position here, Phill, dressed all in orange, one of the Dutch supporters from the football from last night. And although they were expecting to go through, they were taken out by Russia in what was a very dramatic match. So he'd probably be hoping that a Dutchman wins the stage here this afternoon to make his weekend in Switzerland worthwhile.
Well, I have to say at the start this morning we thought we'd arrived in the wrong start town, because the Russian flags were decorating the windows of the houses, because Russia had won into the semi-finals yesterday in that competition. Poor old Russia, or maybe poor old Netherlands rather, so maybe they'll have better luck today. They've certainly got some great riders in this race, not least they're depending a lot on Spain's Oscar Freire, who won the first stage, and Spain, of course, they're in the hat tonight in the hope that they will qualify in the semi-finals of the football.
Number 93 there, you can just see the Astana rider. That is Andreas Cloden. He's lying in second place in the overall classification, proving that he is a very solid stage race rider. He was a great asset to Alberto Contador in the Giro d'Italia, but here given his free hand to see whether he could win this race. He's currently lying second, and I think he's too far behind the new man on the block, 23-year-old Kreuziger, to create any surprises on the final day.
It's inside 2 minutes now, so it's very, very good tempo riding by just 1 or 2 riders on the front of the peloton as they go straight through the valley here with the hills all around, but not on top of them yet. We will have a couple of climbs to get over the ridge, which will then take us down towards the finish line in Bern. A minute 56. They've worked very well together, this breakaway. They got away alongside the borders of Lac Lucerne, which is a massive lake. It's over 100 kilometres, 70 miles round the lake itself. These riders are leaving Altdorf and then racing down the right-hand side, which we drove it yesterday, and I'll tell you, there was dozens of cyclists cyclists, many of them American, riding along that road. What a beautiful road for a bike ride.
Absolutely magnificent. Great climatic conditions, just inside of 30 degrees Celsius, but I have to say I haven't seen a clearer blue sky, I don't think, at any bike race so far this year, and these guys are enjoying that, but they're probably not enjoying the fact that with 30 kilometers to go, the time gap now is starting to come down. You might just have seen them looking back over their right shoulders there, trying to gauge where the main field is, and what they're looking for is the helicopter that will be hovering over the peloton. That will give them an idea roughly where the main field is.
Well, they've slightly changed direction now. The sun coming off from their left shoulder. There's the field now. There's the helicopter, the giveaway. He's gone to the back of the bunch in disgrace. That's what he should be.
Well, I tell you what, you look how long this main field is, Phil. That's an indication that the pressure is starting to come up. We're probably riding at about 35 miles an hour here. Still no real aggression in Team Liquid Gas. They're on the defensive. All they've got to do is make sure that nobody tries to slip away on the running down towards the finish. But we will start to see the teams of the sprinters feel they can win this race today.
29 kilometers before the man in yellow's dream will come true. Roman Kreuziger sits there, his team all around them. This could be a huge victory for the Italian team of Liquid Gas. We'll know soon. See you in a moment. And that's a race to watch out for. Well, I think even our leader of the Tour de Suisse will qualify for the Tour of Pennsylvania, Paul. He's only 23.
At 23 years of age, that man has got a very long future ahead of him, and he's ridden this race very sensibly. And he obviously likes Switzerland, Phil, because as you said earlier, he was second in the Tour of Romandy to one Andreas Kloden. And if this race runs out with the overall classification as it was this morning, that'll be a simple reversal.
Well, the peloton, and it's unusual to see the race leaders team in second place in the peloton, but they're there just keeping an eye on him. They're not interested in catching the breakaway. That's been left to Quick Step to drive the charge here for the finish. And I think you're right, Paul. It would be for Gerd Stegmans, I would think, if they tried to get him home. That'd be a nice result. Remember, Stegmans was the rider who won in Ghent when he led out Tom Bonen in the Tour de France last year, and Tom finished second and Gert won it.
Well, Stegmans has had a great season so far this year. He's won 5 races, including 2 stages of Paris-Nice and a stage in the 4 days of Dunkirk as well. So I think the team will try and get him to the finish line, and he may well have to be the sprinter for Team Quick Step when we go through to the Tour de France, because, as we said earlier, Tom Bonen at the moment has been excluded by the organisation.
Actually, that's a very good point now, because they're having to rethink their tactics here, so they might be saying that we're going to have a dress rehearsal and see if we can get Stegmans ready, because the lead-out men are here as well in Steven de Jong and Matteo Tessato, and they'll probably be the boys who'll try to guide him home if they catch the 5 in front.
And bear in mind, at Quick Step, one of those teams that have only lost 1 rider on the run-in towards the finish line here in Switzerland. That, surprisingly enough, is the Italian national champion, Giovanni Visconti. We saw him on the attack a couple of days ago, but now he's taken the short trip home to Italy, while he's left the sprinters and the men of the flatlands to try and get some glory for the team. 28 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 54 seconds. I still think it's good for the sprinters.
Well, it's come back half a minute, and we haven't got to that little hill yet, but it's not far away now. There's only one way off this valley road, and it's over the little climbs of 2 of them. And it looks as though Perez there wanted to lift this speed just a little bit here. Duclos Lazal sitting at the back. Meanwhile, also there's Glinski, and he's in the lead colours there as King of the Mountains, but he is tied on points. Now, he'll want to keep those 5 boys ahead, because if he keeps them ahead, there's no points for the boys back here.
I think that's the important thing for him. Yes, there are 2 fourth category climbs left to go, and that's at 25 kilometers to go. We're not far away from it right now. He's tied on points with David Lusli, who rides for Team Lampre, one of the Swiss riders who would certainly like to get the points if he can. There is a climb at 8.5 kilometers to go, so as long as the breakaway stays like this, Glinski's got this in the bag, so that's probably why he's smiling.
I think I would too. It's not often you can win a competition without making an effort, but this is one of those days. Happy days for Iglinski. Yes, 2 others in the hat, I think that meant.
And again, Team Astana, Phil, they're leading the King of the Mountains classification. They're leading the team classification here as well, and they've got 2nd place overall, proving, I think, what Johan Brunel said earlier in the year. Instead of doing any politicking with any of the organisers, such as the organisers of the Tour de France, he let his riders do the talking with their legs, and they're certainly doing a good job there.
They are. The best team of the year is being left out of the Tour de France. I think we're all agreed on that. The camera did well there to find David Lusli, who's on tied points at the moment with Iglinski, but there he is down there, number 64, riding for Lampre. The scene is set. The gap continues to come down, but ever so slowly at 1:52. 27 kilometers to go, 16 miles. Another break coming up. Welcome back as we look at the sharp end of the peloton here in the Tour de Suisse. Just 27 kilometers remaining now. There's some 1,400 or more we've ridden over the last 9 days of racing. We started in the wet. We're coming home in beautiful, warm, sunny conditions. Just under 90 degrees the temperature today. It's got to be one of the hottest days these boys have raced in this year.
Well, it's starting to get up to sort of Tour de France type weather conditions, and we're hoping these weather conditions continue in Europe for the next month or so, because most of these riders would certainly not like to ride the Tour de France in the conditions that the riders at the Giro d'Italia had to face up to, because that has to have been one of the coldest, most miserable Giro d'Italias we've had over the last couple of years, although the racing was fantastic.
Certainly was. There is the beauty of Switzerland. 1:46 the gap as our camera pans down a long road here. We're going south to north as our picture is, and those are the 5 leaders. 1:44, so they've still got a nice lead here. But once they get out of this valley, they'll go over the 2 small climbs. Gerolsteiner, they put a man in the chase now because they're thinking of Marcus Zerberg, perhaps, who's a Swiss rider, and he'll want to win the stage as well. He hasn't been far off. He's a good finisher, and of course on this final day many of the actual greyhounds are already back at home. Job done.
Well, they're on the early slopes of this climb here, Phil. It's not a massive climb. It's around about a kilometre in length, and it's only a 4th category, so I probably won't even sprint when they get to the summit of this climb, but it gives me a chance just to tell you a little bit about the man sitting on the back there, Martin Jalinghi. We always talk about the riders' records and what they've won in the past, and although Martin Jalinghi, a Dutch rider who came to prominence by winning the Tour of Belgium, he probably has one of the most exotic records when it comes to winning bike races, Phil, because he won races like the Tour of Burkina Faso and the Tour of Qinghai Lake in China, so that's pretty phenomenal.
But he's finally earned his place in the big races too, and he is a star, so let's see how he gets on today. But he's in the breakaway. 500 meters to the king of the mountains. Oh dear, we've been building this climb up as rather like a huge mountain. It's just a ripple on the countryside.
Well, it's not really that hard to find a ripple on the run in towards Bern. We've left all the massive mountains behind us, and don't think these riders haven't been over some big brutes here this week, because some of the Swiss climbs have been as high as 2,000 meters. But fortunately for the riders, the roads have been good. 250 meters to go, and for the sprint, I think I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks a lot. Well, I don't think anybody's going to worry too much about the sprint, and I hope the riders back there haven't misjudged the chase down, because this is hardly a climb. It does look a little bit worse than it is on the camera, but there's the top, and it looks like Darren Lowe for Team BMC is going to take him over the line. Darren is a sprinter, believe me, but that's a good result. Team BMC, the American squad here, and looking as though they're coming towards a strong finish in the Tour de Suisse.
And I think that result there, Phil, will make Martin Aglinski from Team Astana just a little bit happier. He now knows there's only one King of the Mountains classification left, and there's confirmation of the result. Darren Lill, René Weisinger from Germany, and Hervé Duclos-Lassalle of France getting himself 3rd place and a single point.
Team car up behind them. Help required at the back end of the race here. This is Team Astana. No big dramas back there. It looks like Sergei Yakovlev, Kazakhstan. They've had a very enjoyable tour. They really had a very enjoyable year, apart from the results in the Tour de France, which they can't ride because they've had a tremendous season.
Well, they'll now, I think, have to concentrate on the latter part of the season, taking a break when everybody else lines up in the month of July for the Tour de France. And of course, they're making no bones about the fact that they really want to do well in the Vuelta a España, which is at the end of the year in September. But of course, in recent weeks, the man who won the Giro d'Italia, Alberto Contador, has said that he will participate in the Olympic Games, although earlier on he thought that the course didn't suit him. It's a little bit interesting, the debates going on about whether or not that course is going to be too difficult for the sprinters, because a couple of countries have decided they want to take their sprinters.
Nobody seems to be able to make up their mind. That's going to be quite a subject of discussion after we get the Tour de France out of the way, of course. It's a big call for the professionals to lead the Tour de France, expect themselves to do well in the Olympic Games. Totally different competition, and not only that, but a long way away from France as well. So the jet lag will be taken into account as well. There's the finish, the stadium down there, the football stadium. We're on the outside, by the way. There'll be no sprinting to the goalposts. We race up the side of it to the finish, where it's all laid out, and terrific facilities. the efficiency of the Swiss nation is second to absolute none. The organisation is superb, and so too is the riding here. So we'll take a break. The boys are heading towards Bern, and now exactly 15 miles from the finish. The gap, I think, still in their favour. Welcome back to the Tour de Suisse now, 23 kilometres from the end, 1:28 the gap. And news reaching us here in Switzerland that Daniel Martin, who is a British rider, rides on the Slipstream Chipotle team, got a great win yesterday in the Route du Sud. And we've often looked at the Route du Sud, Paul, haven't we, as a real preparation race for the Tour de France.
Again, another indicator of who's riding well for the Tour de France. So I think for Team Slipstream Chipotle, which is about to change its name, we will see the new jersey, the new colours of the team when we go through to the Tour de France. All very secretive at the moment, but they will then change their name to Garmin Chipotle. And I have to say that that indicates that they're bringing their riders to form right on time. And Dan Martin, by the way, is the nephew of one Stephen Roche, who won the Tour de France back in 1987.
Absolutely. And his brother, by the way, was also a British road racing champion as well. So it's all in the family, and it's all good news for the new American team as well. Good choice there by Jonathan Vaughters. These are the 5 leaders. If you're just joining us, no, if you're not, Francesco Perez, René Wessinger, Darren Lill, Martin Jangelai and Hervé Duclos-Lassalle are the 5 riders who made the break a long time before we came on air. They were out to 2.5 minutes. They're back to 1:27. This is a sprint along the way, but these boys are more interested in the big sprint at the finish, I think, right now. Little Darren Lill is on the front for Team BMC, and there's going to be a little counter move going here. René Wessinger, one of the wild card entries for Team Volkskrant. He gets a spin there from Hervé Duclos-Lassalle.
I think he was looking for the money there on the line, because I think he probably feels that at 21 kilometres to go with just inside of 1.5 minutes, it's probably not going to be the big sprint for the line, but it's going to be a complicated run-in now, Phil, because at 20 kilometres to go, we're actually in the outskirts of Bern, and for the next 20 kilometres or 12.5 miles, these riders will completely and utterly be riding through the streets of Bern, and that might make it a little bit difficult for the main field behind to get the organised chase sorted out.
It might swing their way, because at 20 kilometres, the peloton's under the same sprint point now. Surely that's not right. It must be further down the road, because there's the main field. We're seeing 1:26 here, 19.8 kilometres left to go. We've entered the outskirts of Bern with the leaders now, and this is a very tortuous route from now on. It's going to inspire the riders to drive for home. A little bit of repair work to be done here for the breakaway, as Darren Lill, Wessinger from the Volksbank and Hervé Duclos-Lassalle tried to split it up, but having none of it here. That's Jangelai coming back.
Well, Jangelai has seen that as a very dangerous split, especially running into around about 12.5 miles to go to the finish. Hervé Duclos-Lassalle is a rider in the red shorts on the front there, the son of Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle. I bet a lot of riders would prefer to be over here on the left-hand side, because it is rather warm here in Bern.
But the rivers look nice and cooling. There's a water temperature in Lake Lucerne today of 20 degrees. How do I know that? I met an American just walking out before the start this morning, and he said it was glorious. 1:24 the gap.
Well, still, I think a little bit precarious. Those guys have seriously got to keep themselves organised. There is still that nasty climb to go at 8.5 kilometres or 5 miles to go to the finish, and that will be the last King of the Mountains point of this race. And I'm sure Maxime Eglinski is thinking all about that, because he's the tied leader in the King of the Mountains classification for Team Astana. It really does look quite glorious down there in that river, as we can see. We're waiting for the main field to come. The gap at 12.5 miles to go, 1:21.
Inside 20 kilometres now for the leaders. They've passed the banner. There's a new slalom course, but not for cyclists. As the peloton make the corner, we'll take another break. There's still time for them to get back into the action. Well, the Tour de France is something for us all to look forward to in the month of July. We're going to see a great competition of that, I feel certain, this year. We've seen some good racing all year, in fact, and no obvious outstanding favourite for that race yet. There's the peloton. They continue to nose the way back into this. 1:18 the gap now.
Well, they'd like to see the 1 minute margin at 10 kilometers to go, because that's when the sprinters will start to lick their chops a little bit, thinking they've got a great chance of winning the race here. And there are still some pretty good sprinters left in this bike race, Phil, as we look at the leading group of 5. Not quite as organized as they were a little while back. They're now starting to think about, are they going to survive? Do I need to save a little bit of energy to try and win the sprint if we stay clear towards the finish line? And that's when it starts to lose the impetus in the breakaway.
A bit of an impromptu feeding station here for the 5 leaders. There is one in the break for Silence Lotto. Jangalai, he's not interested, concentrating now at 19 kilometers to go. He can last just those extra few miles now. Darren Lowe looking very cool and collected on the front, taking a drink for him. We know a lot about Darren Lowe because we've seen him grow up in South Africa, and now he's got a chance here to ride on the American BMC team, which in turn has taken full advantage of the Swiss invitation to ride here. They also rode in the Tour of Romandie. Underneath the finishing line, what a shame it's not the one, because now we go out on another circuit.
Nog één ronde, just 1 lap to go, and that 1 lap is around about 18.5 kilometers. That's Darren Lill in 3rd position there with a bottle in his mouth. The crowd have turned out for this final day of the Tour of Switzerland. I'm sure they were thinking that they want to cheer on one Fabian Cancellara, but he's at the moment in the main field just over a minute behind, and I bet he's starting to nurture, Phil, thoughts of a victory.
1 lap to go up to the tree lines. You get a chance now to see the finishing straight here. They've just gone through. It's a good sprint finish for the sprinters, that's for sure. The clock is counting on the right for the gap. Nog één ronde is 1 lap. And it looks as though we're still having a lot of hard work being done on the front by Hubert Schwab here, amongst others. Also, Gerolsteiner are working extremely hard to try and bring this gap back.
Just caught a quick glimpse of Bobby Julich a little bit further back down the field there, alongside his mate Jens Voigt, who rode a pretty impressive individual time trial yesterday. But I think the boys from CSC here this afternoon will be thinking about Cancellara. And now we get a very interesting time gap, because it is inside the 1 minute. On the clock, they're going to stop it there at 56 seconds.
I thought our clock was giving us a little bit of a misnomer out on the course at that previous sprint. They're less than a minute behind now, so they are going to bring them back. I'm sorry to say, in some ways, I would like to see Darren Lowe score there for South Africa and for the American team, but it looks as though they will get picked up.
Yes, but which one of the sprinters is going to be the sprinter to pick up the win here this afternoon, or is Cancellara going to outfox them? You know, we talked about Stegemans and Oscar Freire. We talked about Eric Zabel. One man from Silence Lotto who could create the surprise, of course, because Robbie McEwen is not here, is Greg van Avermaet, and he's not a bad sprinter himself, and he's won a couple of races so far this season. Add to that Robbers Forster, Gerard Scholik, who's been pretty close on a number of occasions this week, could also be the man to take it home for Team High Road.
And he's been sprinting well in his home country of Germany. He's been winning races there, so let's see if he can pull off one extra. Team High Road have had such a magical season with all the victories. Nothing would surprise me anymore with that team. 17 kilometers to go. That's about 20 minutes of racing.
Yep, inside of the 1 minute mark, and now you can see the nervousness. Team Milram, they're thinking about Eric Zabel, but I have to say, Phil, just looking at this finishing line, it really is a little bit tricky, because it is quite narrow. It's probably one of the narrowest finishing lines we've seen for a while, and that's not a bad place to be.
Oh, well, it seems not everybody wants to see the passage of the Tour de Suisse here. Very hot day, one of the rare hot days of the European summer, I hasten to say, because a lot of rain has been around this year. The sun is out today, and they're all down the pool. Meanwhile, over the other side of Bern, the Tour de Suisse is coming to a big climax here. 56 seconds, it's still saying up there. I've lost faith in that clock.
No, I think the problem is the clock comes to us through the GPS systems. It's come down and corrected itself just to keep you happy.
I believe it now. 52 seconds is the gap. We'll take a break. Rejoin us. Welcome back. It's now 50 seconds the gap here on these 5 leaders as they start to course around this magnificent city here at Bern. Wide, empty roads. These are the 5 riders who have set the pace virtually throughout the day. And number 1 there, wearing it by virtue of the fact his teammate Vladimir Karpic is not here, who won the race last year, is Francisco Perez Sanchez, to give him his full Spanish name. 46 seconds. It's coming down quickly now. As he passes under yet another railroad track. There's plenty of them here in Switzerland.
Well, the great thing about Switzerland is it's known for its history in horology. keeping clocks on time, but they're also well known for keeping their trains on time as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the train in the main field has got themselves organised, because that looks like a very rapid speed. Complicated to race 16 kilometres around the heart of a city like this, but you can actually see that the Swiss have got this city closed down for the bike race here this afternoon in perfect style.
Well, we've got a train on the left heading on the circuit. We've got the train on the right. A long one it is too. But the train on the left is probably making the best progress right now as Milram start to drive it towards those 5 leaders. I think they will get swept up, but somebody in that break of 5 sooner or later will make a desperate dash for the finish. I feel sure of that.
Well, if they're still surviving at 8.5 kilometres to go, that's probably the best place to make that move, because there's that final little climb of the day, and that is at the Arguerstalden. And that is 5 miles to go. A great place to make the move, but I'm not sure they're going to survive quite that long.
8 kilometres, only 5 miles. Well, we'll see. As we've lost the riders in the underground tunnels here now somewhat. The helicopter will no doubt find them very shortly, but as I say, as Paul has said, the sprinters here are quite questionable now. There'll be a lot of riders in this race right now who believe they have the sprinters under control. 39 seconds to go. We feel pretty sure that Cancellara will make a dive for home if they do pick them up. His whole family are here, mum, dad and everybody else, and the children. He lives here. He lives about 2 kilometres or a mile away from the finishing line, so he knows exactly where he's going right now.
It's not much of a drive home after this race, does it? These 5 riders are still working well together, but they probably in the back of their minds are wondering how long it's going to be before they get caught. This is a nice avenue right in the heart of Bern. 37 seconds is all that's left for these riders, and at these speeds that correlates to around about 500 metres. So on any of the long straightaways, these men, Phil, will now be in sight.
I think sadly they've already given up, Paul. They're looking over the shoulders. 37 seconds as Jangalai waiting for the catch here. Now he knows it can't be far. This is the next sprint or the top of the King of the Mountains. I'm not too sure. It might be the next King of the Mountains, is it, or sprint?
This is the next sprint the riders are coming up to. There's another
looks like
sprint
a mountain
just before they come up to the 4th category climb.
Well, once over the sprint here, then it's up to the little climb towards the finish, but they're right behind them. Again, the clock has stuck at 37 seconds, but I would think it's even less than that, because they look as though they've taken the pressure off here.
Yes, I think they're looking over their shoulders waiting, which means that if they do get caught, Phil, in the next kilometre or so, there's going to be quite a sprint for that last King of the Mountains point.
Well, Jangalai wants this one. He's trying to nose out Duclos Lazal, who finished second last time. And I think it's he's going to let him go for this one. This time, Hervé Duclos Lazal gets himself a prize into the Cofidis Bank, followed by Jangalai there. Now, is anybody going to go for it? We'll wait for the time check on that. It's 36 seconds on our clock here, but I'm not so sure that's right. Small time bonuses, but means nothing at all. Oh, we've had a crash here. This is rather sad. Gregory Ratz, who's also a Swiss rider, has obviously fallen off our camera. We didn't see this at all.
Well, that was, I think, Phil on the corner coming around there before that King of the Mountains.
There we go.
There it is on the left-hand side of the road. He hit a bollard. And that is pretty sad for a Swiss rider right towards the end. 14 kilometres to go, and he went down pretty hard.
Oh, it's amazing. His bike is standing up there as if it was going the other way and wasn't being used. Won a new bike. 31 seconds, they're saying.
Looking for the doctor here. He looks pretty shaken there at half a minute's advantage now with 14 kilometres to go. And Eglinski, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification with Loosely, Phil, is going to have to come to the front end of the main field, because he's going to have to defend that lead in that competition, I think, because these men at 8.5 kilometres to go, I feel, will certainly be back in the fold.
Well, that's really bad luck there for Gregory Rask. That might interrupt the impetus of the peloton, although at 28 seconds, the catch is nigh. We won't miss the catch, believe me, but we will take a break. See you in a moment. Welcome back. The last 12 kilometres of the Tour de Suisse, a race which has been dominated today by 5 riders. They've been out in front for most of it, and now the gap just 23 seconds here, and the field is out of control. They're driving home.
Well, I think the field are under control because they're really trying to pull these 5 riders back, the sprinters, and there are a lot of good sprinters left in the main field of the Tour of Switzerland, despite the elimination of Danilo Napolitano yesterday, the non-start of Robbie McEwen. There's still some pretty rapid men left in this bike race, and this is what they're looking for, these 5 riders. Hervé Duclos Lassalle just sitting at the back, Darrell Lynn of Australia, but look, Phil, you can almost physically see the difference in the speed.
You can, and at 18 seconds, they can physically see the peloton just behind them now, I'm afraid, as the peloton courses through the streets of the city of Bern here in Switzerland. And a very fast chase it is now.
Also notice riders from Lamprey moving to the front, and that is going to try and hot up the final sprint for the King of the Mountains classification, because there are two riders tied with the same points, 42 points for Maxime Iglinski and of course for David Loosely, and Loosely just happens to come from Switzerland.
So that is Astana versus Lamprey. At 17 kilometres now, the top of the climb comes at around 8 kilometres from the finish, and so I can bet my life that Iglinski is rather hoping the catch isn't for another 3.5 kilometres. Then he won't have to worry about it. But Lamprey clearly are driving this race on now to deliver loosely to the top of the climb.
Yep, a little indication there of the danger in the middle of the road. This is an urban circuit the riders are facing here. The Spitze group, as they say in Swiss German, the leading group, looking over their shoulders. They're wondering whether or not they will survive. Iglinski, Phill, is 1.5 kilometres away from winning the King of the Mountains classification. This group has still got 19 seconds. Will they survive to the top of the climb?
Well, I think they might. It's touch and go here, because they might well use the climb as well to jump away. It's very narrow there for the roadworks. Meanwhile, back at the swimming pool, life is just as tranquil as ever as the race goes past underneath.
Well, it's tranquil on the right-hand side, but that long line of the main field is not very tranquil at all. It's full steam ahead and alarm bells ringing. Now you've got Gerolsteiner coming up to the front. It's around about 20 seconds, 10 kilometres to go, but 1.5 Ks to the top of the climb.
It is yo-yoing at the moment. He's been down to 17. He's back to 20 right now. These boys are not giving up without a fight. Desperate moments here on the flat roads of the Tour de Suisse as we head towards the finish in the centre of Bern. We've seen the finishing line. It is a sprinter's delight, but a little matter of bringing them all back. And Quick-Step want to get Girk Stegmans over that line first.
Well, look, this is what it looks like at the Hintermundem de Veld, at the back end of the bike race. It really is hang on. The sad thing about Bern, by the way, is when you're down by the river, to get to the city, you have to go uphill.
That's absolutely right, and we're towered over by bridges and viaducts here in this lovely city. It's a confluence of rivers as well. 14 seconds rather, just over 5 miles. So it looks as though they're going to just about scrape over the top of that hill, and Iglinski's going to win the King of the Mountains, equal on points with David Loosely.
Or are they? Because my calculation there, Phill, was again, you're not trusting that clock, and I think you're right, because it's not 12 seconds.
No.
I reckon it's around about 7 or 8 seconds, and they haven't yet started the climb because they're still down by the river. So I think we're going to see a pretty impressive sprint at the top of the climb here. Over the bridge there, we should see the leading group of 5. There they are, and the main field should be turning onto it right now. And there you can see that green bridge across the road. That is the start of the climb.
Well, I'll give it 6 seconds as well, so they must have a cuckoo in this clock here in Bern as they go through 9 kilometres to go. They're right on them now. It's all coming together for the final run into the finish. It's going to be a real tough run, this. It's be a difficult one for the sprinters to work it out as well. Now, our motorbike, for some reason, is not down there with the leaders, which is what we would like to see right now. Here they come as Perez Sanchez here tries to get away from the field. If he can just survive to the top of the hill, Iglinski will be happy with that.
Well, Perez has seen this as a launch pad for him to try and get off the front end of the main field. Iglinski will be happy with a move like this, but he has to survive Perez to see if he can take first place. But there's the front end of the main field, and there is still points available. And Lamprey, Phill, are all over the front end of this race because David Loosely, let's not forget, just 1 point, that's all he needs.
Any point will do here, but the breakaway is still clear of the field here. There's 3 of them up here now. It's only a 4th category climb. And they're not thinking of the points, they're thinking to win the race. Here comes Loosely and the Lamprey boys. And this Iglinski is right on Loosely's wheel here. Have you ever seen this? A 4th category climb, the last one of a major stage race, gathering all this attention.
Well, it's all about 1 point. That's all either of these riders needs to win this classification. They're down to just 2 men left in front. One man is being called there.
That's 1 down. That's 1 point in the bag.
Here we go.
Iglinski's going. Loosely's alongside him. He who wins takes the jersey home. And it looks as though Lamprey did all the work, but Iglinski has all of the strength. Well, that's amazing. Good competition resulting in a win for Astana's Maxime Iglinski. He goes home as King of the Mountains. No finer way to do it than on the last climb against the man who is finishing right behind you there. Now it's all eyes down. There's 8 kilometres to go for the finish here.
And I tell you what, Phil, I've got a funny feeling he's gone over the top of that, and he might be looking for the little lone attack, and that I thought was a great launch pad to try and move off the front end of the main field at a time like this. 5 miles to go, and here in the pink jersey, a little bit like Alberto Contador a couple of weeks ago, is Maxim Iglinski.
Well, Iglinski is on form. Remember, he sprinted well in the Tour of Romandy, and look, he knows he packs the sprint finish. He won the opening stage in that race, his only win of the year, and he went on to win his finish ninth overall. So here we are, slightly different part of Switzerland, and he's still on good form.
He certainly is. We can see the front end of the main field are pretty much under control now. Everybody, I think, backing off a fraction. A rider there on the right-hand side for Team High Road. They're thinking possibly about Gerald Cholek, their sprinter, but Iglinski has certainly put the cat amongst the pigeons here this afternoon. There's confirmation. David Loosely second. They must have reeled in the whole of that main field on the King of the Mountains breakaway inside the last 150 meters.
We didn't see the cat. It was off to the right of our camera, but they were in fact sprinting for first place on that climb. As it was, he who wins takes home the jersey. So look at that now. Well, 7 kilometers to go. All the mountains literally after 9 days are behind the riders. There's still the matter of the big finish. We'll be there when you come back. See you in a moment. Welcome back. We look down from the helicopter. This is a desperate dash for the finish by Maxim Iglinski to sign off for Astana on the last event before the Tour de France on a high note. And they're not going to the Tour de France, but boy, they have registered the best possible protest.
They certainly have. Iglinski, the champion of Kazakhstan here, by the way, has got himself a very nice advantage. Now another move coming here from Team Lampre. Everybody now trying to throw caution to the wind and get themselves off the front end of this main field. And there is still a slight climb up to the last kilometre and a half, which makes it very difficult. We are at 6 kilometres to go, and you can just see that Iglinski is holding on to around about a 50-metre advantage. I have a feeling he will not survive here, because the sprinters teams must certainly get themselves organised for this one.
Well, he's currently the national road race champion of Kazakhstan, but 2 years ago he was the national time trial champion. Let's see now if he can find the form of 2006. Somebody is coming after him, I think.
Well, you can see 1 or 2 riders trying to take advantage of this. A little bit scraggly at the front end of the main field here. No serious organisation. This big move here coming from one of the big riders from Quick Step. That is Leonardo Scarzelli. He's thinking about Gert Steegmans.
He wants this guy back in the peloton as fast as possible so they can prepare Steegmans. Steegmans will use Tossato and Stefan de Jong to lead him to the line if that's the way it's going to be. But you're looking at a man here who has terrific ability as a time trial. He's got all the qualities of a great bike rider. He's just won the King of the Mountains. He can ride a time trial. He can also sprint.
He's a big, strong bike rider, but at 6 kilometres to go, somebody's coming across the gap there. There's a slight move off the front end of the main field, and it looks like a rider from Case d'Epargne coming through there at 5Ks to the finish.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me it's not Gutierrez who's just bridged the gap there, but there's 2 of them now, but no time for a deep breath. It's straight through to the front and give Iglinski a hand. That's the way it's going to be as they start to do it together.
Well, Iglinski's moved across there to try and get himself onto the back wheel, and I tell you one thing, another rider coming across the gap there as well is a rider from Quick Step. So if 3 riders get together at the front end of the main field, they could create the surprise and upset the sprinters.
Well, it'll put Quick Step in a difficult position if they get a man over there. We still haven't got down there. It looks as though it is Jose Ivan Gutierrez who's bridged the gap, but we don't know that at the moment. Quick Step certainly is bridging. This race will not lie down. This is very typical, you know, of the situation. This is Scarzelli, Paul. He actually ripped away from the field.
Well, I think he was trying to organise a chase at the front end of the main field. You can see Lampre, the riders, taking control of the front end of the peloton. Now, a 3-man group is going to be that little bit more difficult to pull back, or will it? Because there they are. Not surprising if you see some of the orange jerseys at 4K to go moving forward. They're thinking about Oscar Freire, winner of stage 1.
Well, it's Lampre now, possibly for Alessandro Ballan, who's trying to close the gap down, but it looks as though it might happen at 4 kilometres to go. It looks as though Iglinski, he's blown his legs, he's gone back, but he's left the other 2. We're still want definite confirmation of the Spanish rider up there, but certainly Scarzelli has got there.
Well, it's going to be a sprint. I'm absolutely certain of that now, Phil, as we start to run down towards the finish. There's another slight little climb at 1.5Ks to go, which could give these guys a slight advantage. Scarzelli there, the main field coming round. They really are starting to bore down on these riders. Orange jerseys at the front, and as you can see, Rabobank trying to keep this in control because they're thinking of Oscar Freire. Lost are the men from Milram looking after Eric Zabel, but that doesn't matter. Zabel knows how to look after himself.
And this is everything Liquigas could have dreamed of here. here. They're bringing home the race winner. He's not being attacked, and he can't be attacked now by Andreas Kloden. We'll have to be content with a second place finish. 3 kilometers banner that was. Just trying to find out if we can read the number on that rider, because I still haven't got him worked out. It might be Mathieu Pergier, the Frenchman, on the squad, but I just can't quite see his number.
Well, it's a big move here. He's a big, strong bike rider trying to survive. He looked over his shoulder and saw the hesitation in the main field and thought, right, at 3Ks to go, I'll have another move. And again, somebody has seen this as an opportunity. Another rider scrabbling across the gap.
It's not often you see a race coming to a sprint like this with riders getting away in once from the peloton. Desperate moments, and they require desperate efforts. But this is the way the season has been this year. There's been some tremendous bike races this year. Now it looks as though we've just about got 3 men at the front. The peloton snapping at the heels, but not able to bite into the flesh. And now they're all over them. That's it. Silence Lotto have got control, but there's no Robbie McEwen.
There's no Robbie McEwen, but there is a Greg Van Avermaet, and he'll be the man in 4th position. He's a very rapid rider. Won a stage. The first time I recognized this rider was a stage in the Tour of Qatar, and he will be at the back of that big line there, trying to show that Team Silence Lotto have got great sprinters. Gerolsteiner up there as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see Robert Forster, but I'm still looking for Oscar Freire.
Oscar Freire has a habit of staying out of the action until the last minute. We'll spot him in the orange and blue jerseys of Rabobank. And the sprinters now very definitely have control of this. I'd step back off that corner if I was the marshal.
Somebody just about missed that bollard there, kept himself upright, but that's why it's dangerous on the front here. This looks like big Johan van Sommeren. He's a strong bike rider now. 2Ks to go, looking over his shoulder. He's got the gap, and this is the little run up towards the finish, and his teammates can't even stay on his wheel.
Well, it's wonderful to see a race that they can't keep control of, because that's what's happening here right now. But again, Van Sommeren made the move. His legs haven't made the speed. He's gone straight through the peloton. He'll be coming in behind the race now as again Silence Lotto take over. Greg Van Avermaet, normally the lead-out man for McEwen, has his best chance he's ever had.
Eric Zabel's right up there in 3rd or 4th, but so too is Mark Renshaw for Crédit Agricole. Now, he had a great start to the season. He's an Australian rider, now looking to take his form through to the Tour de France. Still, Silence Lotto in control. You've got Eric Zabel right up there in 4th position, Renshaw in 6th position, and everybody else just queuing up behind.
Well, Zabel, this amazing man, he should be on his pension. He's been around so long. He still holds the record for Germany, 12 stage wins in the Tour de France. He's had a second this week when Cancellara rode away from the field. And talking to Cancellara, any moment now is when he will have to make his move.
Well, if Fabian Cancellara wants to win, he's going to have to create a little bit of a surprise for the sprinters, but the pace is so high on this climb up towards the finish line, where it will finally level out with around about 600 meters to go. The crowd now are starting to make a hell of a racket out here, waiting to welcome the riders of the Tour of Switzerland home. As you can see, a little bit of disorganization now happening for Team Silence at the front, and that looks to me as though that could be a move by Philippe Gilbert.
It is Gilbert who's made the move for Français Jujur, a typical move by this man from Belgium, and he's really got his legs on here. As he starts to lift up, he must be around 500 meters from the line, and they were looking at the wrong person, I think, because Gilbert is turning the screw here.
Well, that was a good place to make the move. That's the kind of move that, of course, Fabian Cancellara would have liked to make himself. And it is Fabian Cancellara coming up.
Well, we expected it. He isn't going to go down without a fight. The big man with the big engine. Look at those legs pumping like pistons. But can he catch Philippe Gilbert? Gilbert that deserves this win. He's made the move. Fabian Cancellara, the world time trial champion, is closing in inch by inch. Is the line going to come sooner? Driven on by the thought his family is waiting on the line. But Gilbert kicks again, and now too Cancellara is in his slipstream. Cancellara makes the move. Is it going to be an inch too far? Cancellara wins on the line. That is unbelievable, and you can probably hear the Swiss shouting. Paul, that was incredible, and Van Avermaet is beaten on the line there, I think, by Marcus Zuberg.
Phil, that is class. That is absolute and utter class to do that. You know, a moment at around about 150 meters. Look at this man. He can't even stand up anymore. He's gone above and beyond the call of duty. He wanted that, and he's congratulated there by Philippe Gilbert. That is sportsmanship. He wanted to win here. Nobody gave him any presents. That was brilliant.
Well, he deserved that. His 8th win of the year. Fabian Cancellara. Stuart O'Grady is there as well. That was a real demonstration of fabulous Cancellara.
Well, that reminds me a little bit of his victory last year with the yellow jersey on his shoulders in Compiègne. He tried for that, Phil. That is a man that's really ridden with his guts and his heart.
And that is how you win a race when the odds are stacked up against you. But the crowd was the magnet and Cancellara was the attraction.
I have to say, I really didn't believe he was going to pull it in at the last moment there. Let's have a look at this one more time. You've got to have a massive, big, double-turbo engine to pull back a man like Philippe Gilbert. Gilbert made the right move at the right time, but Fabian Cancellara knows this finishing line, and funnily enough, he won here 12 months ago in exactly the same place, but then it was the individual time trial. Even at this point, Gilbert thought, I can still win this, but the man on the left, Cancellara, would not give up at all. Just enough time to look back and say, thank you very much. Hop, 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 Suisse.
Well, Cancellara, that was his plan. He must have thought that Gilbert had ruined the party there. Where he found that extra surge just by the line, it can only be because he was Swiss and he lives here. Well, there's the result for you. Cancellara wins by 0 seconds over Gilbert, of course. Moreno was third at 4 seconds. Tezato was fourth there. Zeberg was fifth. Greg Van Avermaet finished in sixth, all in the peloton. Sergei Ivanov seventh, and the top 10 completed by Eric Zabel. Well, there he is, to the noise of a home crowd, Fabian Cancellara. He says he knows every millimetre of these roads. He proved it today, but Philippe Gilbert must have given him a fright. But yet last year, it was a time trial, same finishing podium. This year, it's a road race. This man can do it any which way he pleases. Well, the Swiss may have gone out of the Soccer European Championships at the first hurdle. Cancellara, though, has made good for them here. There is his wife and daughter. And I think his wife has spent the last 10 minutes teaching his daughter how to give a victory salute. Fabian can tell her. And here's the overall final classification, brought to you by Farmers Insurance. A win by Roman Kreuziger, the first ever rider from the Czech Republic to win the Tour de Suisse. He reverses the result of the Tour of Romandy here in Switzerland. He beats Andreas Kloden by just a few seconds. Igor Anton, who led for 4 days, finishes third. Kuhnigos ready for the Tour de France in fourth place. And further down, Kim Kirken, he finished in seventh. He was second last year. Christian Knaes there as well. The top 10 completed by Lawrence ten Dam. We're waiting now to see the young man from the Czech Republic, the first ever Czech Republic rider to win the Tour de Suisse, join Andreas Kloden, who, by the way, celebrates his 33rd birthday today, and Igor Anton, the rider who led for 4 days, join this 9-day race. There's no doubt about the winner. At 23 years of age, he's just midway through his third professional season. He now gets a huge victory here, and as I say, he's reversed the situation on Andreas Kloden from the nearby Tour of Romandy, which is based in Geneva. Well, he looks as though he's a little bit mesmerised by that maillot jaune he's pulling on there. Well, I hope he's got some strength left to carry the big mascot here. Every winner gets one. Andreas Kloden on the right of our picture, 33 years old today, and sadly will not be in the Tour de France. But there again, Astana have put a man in the leaderboard of a major tour in the build-up to the Tour de France. So Kreuziger is the winner of the Tour de Suisse, but the winner of the day was Fabian Cancellara for sure. Here he is now talking with Paul Sherwen.
Fabian, this morning you told me the finish in Bern was a bit of a lottery. It was a good lottery for you.
I think it was bingo. I think I did something impressive. I mean, I was waiting, I was looking, everybody was looking at me, and then on the end, chase Gilbert back like this. I'm without words. I mean, full emotion. You win at home, everybody knew it, and you know, win away like this, it's nice.
Philippe Gilbert looked very strong. Was there any time when you thought, I can't get him back, I'm not going to win this, I'm going to be second?
I was always thinking, hopefully the line is still a few meters after and not straight on, because I saw him, he was going not early, but he was going on a way that for me was too early. I was a bit blocked, but then I say, now you give everything out and bring that victory home. And now I'm home, I win, and I think perfect Tour de Suisse for me.
Just tell me one thing though, how deep did you have to go to get that win today?
I think it's for people that go still on the bike, it's hard to believe, but you have to go really, really deep. I think when you have cramps on the end and you have to stop pedaling because you have still the pain there and the acid in the legs is something quite hard. But I think for a couple of seconds you do this, because when you can win like in a way it is, that's sport, that's cycling, and that's the beautiful way.
Well, that's the way to treat your family to a grandstand finish. Well done, Fabian Cancellara. That was a superb finish, I have to say. All right, well, the Tour de France is now upon us, so next week tune in to our preview show where you'll find out all about this year's Tour de France. What stages will decide the race? Who are the favourites? And what mountains will they climb? That's next week at 5 p.m. here on Cyclism Sundays, presented by Hampton Hotels. And don't forget a full schedule at versus.com. We'll also have the exclusive bonus interviews of the race of today here in Switzerland. We spoke to Fabian Cancellara at length. We also spoke to Frank Schleck. They'll have a lot to tell you. Well, it was a great victory today for both Cancellara and indeed for 23-year-old Kreuziger. What a talent he is. For Paul Sherwen, I'm Phill Liggett saying the next time we meet, apart from the preview of course, will be on the Tour de France. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Goodbye.